All right, welcome out. This is the last in the series of the introduction series to economics. And today we'll be taking a look at Milton Friedman. It's just a short video. Some of the other videos have gotten a bit long, so I'm going to make this one brief. It's a short video of the best moments of Milton Friedman, so it shouldn't take that long. He's died in recent years. He was a senior research fellow at the Hoover Institute, Nobel Prize in economics. He went to Rutgers, University of Chicago. University of Chicago is a big university or well-known university for economics. And then he got his PhD at Columbia. So he was a teacher, but also an economist. He was well known for going down to Chile. It was called the Chilean miracle, where he was able to apply his economic theories to Chile and relatively pull them out of poverty. So not just someone who's speaking in abstract theoretical terms, all very applicable to reality, his ideas. Okay, so let's take a look at Milton Friedman.
Tell me, is there some society that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly from the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise.
Free markets. And I've talked about this before. If you just think about it, just think it through. Logical common sense, right? What do you want to do? What do most people want to do? How are they most content? It's usually by doing what they want to do. It's usually by being free, right? So free enterprise, or I should say free markets, basically that word is going to pop up again and again and again as the scenario, free enterprise, free market system is being described. You have free enterprise or business functioning relatively freely within certain restrictions, laws, and regulations, and so forth, but not too many laws and regulations. Because if you apply too many laws and regulations, then those businesses are working to conform to those regulations and laws more than they are desirous of or working on moving their business forward. And then you've got people in a free society functioning relatively freely within certain laws, of course, functioning relatively freely, where they have freely chosen a profession and freely chosen where to work and how to work and earn a living, and then they're out freely choosing how to spend their money, right? So that's the key phrase, free. Any other system, socialist system, communist system, is going to restrict. And because of those restrictions, there's a case in point, as a matter of fact, in that book, Common Sense Economics, that I've talked about, and have mentioned and advised you to read. In that book, it talks about the fact that in Russia, people were given small lots of land to farm on for themselves, personal land. The rest of the land was farmed by the state. And those small lots, maybe 10% of all the farmland, ended up producing nearly 40% of all farm goods. So, I mean, anytime that you own something, ownership is key. anytime you own something, you're more likely to take care of it, preserve it, want to pass it on to your progenitors, and so forth, right? And that's the key: freedom, free to work, free to own, free to earn, free to live, right? So that's the key word, free. Let me go back a little bit here.
Productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise
But
system.
it's the
The only way in which you can redistribute effectively the wealth is by destroying the incentives to have wealth. And the question is, what is the way, what is a system which will offer those people who are so unlucky as to be born without good positions, what is the system which will offer them the greatest opportunity?
Well, one possible way of redistributing the wealth without affecting the incentives to earn as much income as possible is simply to have a 100% inheritance tax.
But
Since that
would
won't
not-
affect the incentives, it's only after the
I
person's
beg
dead
your,
anyway.
I beg your pardon. You're too, I'm afraid, I don't know the family you come from. I don't, but as you grow up, you will discover that this is really a family society and not an individual society. We tend to talk about an individualist society, but it really isn't. It's a family society. And the greatest incentives of all, the incentives that have really driven people on, have largely been the incentives of family creation, of family pursuing, of establishing their families on a decent system. What is the effect of 100% inheritance tax? The percent of 100% inheritance tax is to encourage people to dissipate their wealth in high living.
What's the harm in that?
The harm in that is that where do you get the factories? Where do you get the machines? Where do you get the capital investment? Where do you get the incentive to improve technology? If what you're doing is to establish a society in which the incentive is for people who, if they by accident accumulate some wealth, to waste it in frivolous entertainment. You know, the thing is that the thing that is amazing that people don't really recognize is the extent to which the market system has, in fact, encouraged people and enabled people to work hard and sacrifice in what I must confess I often regard as an irrational way for the benefit of their children. One of the most curious things to me in observation is that almost all people value the utility which their children will get from consumption higher than they value their own. Here are parents who have every reason to expect that their children will have a higher income than they ever had. And they scrimp and save in order to be able to leave something for their children. I think you are sort of like a bull in a china shop if you talk about the 100% inheritance tax having no incentive effect. It would destroy a continuing society. It would destroy a society. First of all, the government doesn't have any responsibility. People have responsibility. This building doesn't have responsibility. You and I have responsibility. People have responsibility.
Now, this is something that I referred to the other day. I was talking about the wealthy or the elites in this country, and can talk about them around the world, but specifically here, we're talking about in the United States. The elites in this country who misuse their power. They're the ones that fund everything. If you want to get into office, remain in office, move up in office, you know, you go to the wealthy and get some funding through the wealthy. And we talk about, or we hear the Constitution, the laws of land spoken to, but it's not really the responsibility of politicians to make sure that the laws are adhered to, because they'll break the laws as much as they want to or desire to in order to give their benefactors, their special interest groups or individuals, special interest individuals, kickbacks or money, you know, for favors. You know, you do me a favor, you give me a couple $1 million, get me in an office, and then I'll, you know, set up some things in government. I'll enact some regulation that will get some money back to you somehow, right? So there's all, it's really about deal making more than anything else. Research has been done on this, and it's been found time and time again that 90% of decisions made in Washington or by most politicians is not to help you and me, the little person, but to help the benefactors, the wealthy, the elites, those who, you know, pay to help these politicians get into and stay and move up in office. So now, as regards constitutional law, it is really our responsibility. And this is why I'm teaching this stuff. You have to understand basic economics, and you have to understand basic constitutional law, so that the wool will not be pulled over your eyes for you individually and for us collectively. At the individual level, the community level, the state level, the national level, we've got to know. We've got to be awake and aware and in the know in order to really maximize our potentials, our economic potentials, our freedom potentials, law within the laws, and so forth. So therefore, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then the program basically is about, what do most people need most of the time, most situations? Well, they need to know about economics. They need to know about the law of the land. They need to know about themselves. They need to understand themselves. They need to take the Briggs-Myers typology test. They need to be able to get through tough times and be able to deal well with people and communicate well with people and all these things, many things. I often say that even most college grads are not getting maybe 60 to 70% of what is needed in order to not only function at a standardized level in society, but to excel and exceed in one's personal, private, and public life, right? So there's a lot to be done.
Second, the question is, how can we as people exercise our responsibility toward our fellow man most effectively? That's the problem. So far as poverty is concerned, there has never in history been a more effective machine for eliminating poverty than the free enterprise system and the free market. In the period in
If you're interested, just do your own research on this stuff. Don't just believe what I'm saying or what any of these people are saying, Milton Friedman or whoever. Look this stuff up. I mean, the research materials are out there. But no society has been taken out of poverty more quickly and in greater amounts than through free markets. And for all the reasons I've explained, we are by nature a people that want to be free. We are by nature a people that don't want to be restricted or dictated to or told what to do. We want that in ourselves. We want that in our society. We want that in our government. We want that in our businesses. You know, like I remember, what was it, McDonald's, have it your way. Those old McDonald's commercial. And that's kind of one of the basic sentiments of a free society. Have it your way, you know, not so much so that you're infringing upon the rights of others. But whatever you want to do, as long as it's within the law and you're not knowing too many people and you're not being shut down by the majority, go right ahead, have at it.
the period in which you had the greatest improvement in the lot of the ordinary man was the period of the 19th and early 20th century. Those of us in this room are the heirs of that. We benefited from the way in which our parents and our grandparents were able to come here. And by virtue of the freedom that was offered to them, were able to make a better life for themselves and them and us. But next, if you look at the real problems of poverty and denial of freedom to people in this country, almost every single one of them is a result of government action and would be eliminated if you eliminated the bad government failures. Let me be precise and specific. Why do we have so high an unemployment rate among black teenagers? It's a disgrace and a scandal. Why do we have so high an unemployment rate? First of all, because we give them lousy schooling through governmental schools, which make them unqualified to hold decent jobs. And second of all, we require employers to discriminate against them by not hiring them unless their productivity is enough to justify a minimum wage. The minimum wage rate is the most anti-Negro law in the books. And it's an anti-Negro law because it precisely, having first not enabled the young blacks to have a decent schooling so that they can have productivity, we next deny them the on-the-job training that they might get if you can induce employers by being able to hire them for relatively low wages to give them on-the-job training that would make them qualify for higher payment and higher productivity. In the third place, we have constructed a governmental welfare scheme which has been a machine for producing poor people. We have induced people to come under control of welfare. I'm not blaming the people, don't misunderstand me. It's our fault for constructing so perverse and so ill-shaped a monster as the whole set of welfare programs we have, under which we encourage people, families to break up. We encourage people to move from one part of the country and come to another, under which we have, in effect, made many people poor. And yet, when all this is said and done, have I ever been where? Or poor. I have certainly, of course, more so than most of the people in this room. How many of you have worked a 12-hour day and gotten paid 78 cents? But let me go back to but you know, that's all irrelevant. Is there one of you who is going to say that you don't want a doctor to treat you for cancer unless he himself has had cancer? I could go down the line. But when all is said and done, while there are people in this country who are worse off than other people, by and large, even the poorest people in this country are relatively well off compared to the conditions in many other countries in the world. What we take as our standard of poverty, is above the average income of all of the people in the Soviet Union.
Just a second here, and I'll get right back to it. There's a book that I've had my students read. This was quite some time ago. It's about the America's working poverty, and it talks about how those who are American considered poor in America, they own a house, they have air conditioning, they have a pool, they have a couple cars in the yard. But most of the rest of the world, if you're poor, you have nothing. You have no place to live. You don't have running water. You have very little food. And here's another statistic that if you have clothes on your back, money in your pocket, food in your refrigerator, a place to stay, and a car to drive, meaning you probably have a job as well, you're doing better than 85% of the rest of the world, right? Half of the world is living on $3 a day or less. That's about 3 billion people. So we really don't put the overall concept or understanding of where we stand in relationship to the rest of the world. What's happening in the rest of the world? And it's a very egocentric perspective, and you can't help but be that way. I was like that. I really didn't know what was going on until I moved out of Connecticut and moved up to Boston, out to LA, and started to see things and head over the borders and whatnot, and start to read as well, read up on things. Just how good we have it. And nevertheless, people are constantly complaining. And it's okay. Nothing's perfect. And you know, if you want to improve things, that's fine. But considering how we stack up against the rest of the world, we're amazingly prosperous. Okay.
Let alone of the people in India or China or in other countries. Now, that doesn't mean we should be satisfied with it. We are a wealthier country and we've been more productive. And we should set higher standards by ourselves. But by the same token, we ought to have a sense of proportion. And we ought to recognize both the source and the problem.
Equal pay for equal work laws are a source of apartheid. You know, the basic source of apartheid in South Africa was the insistence by trade unions on equal pay for equal work. The women who go around today urging equal pay for equal work are being anti-feminist. They don't intend to be. but that is the effect of their policy. Because if there is any activity in which, for any reason, a male is preferable to a female, or vice versa, the only weapon the less productive sex has is to offer to work for less. And if you deny them that opportunity, you're assuring yourself that you're going to have all male jobs or all female jobs, or all white jobs or all black jobs.
But aren't you also condemning them to stay that way?
Not at all. Not at all. The typical course, if you go back to American history, by taking these low-paid jobs, a great many people, not all, but a great many people were able to develop skills and activities, accumulate a little skill, a little capital, a little knowledge, improve their lot, become advance in the stage, get to a higher level of productivity, and get a higher income. That's been the typical way up the ladder for most of the people who came in here. It was a way up the ladder for my parents, for your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, I don't know which. And that's the way in which, unfortunately, there's no way in which you can immediately propel people to the top of the ladder.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Friedman, referring to the statements that you made about women who advocate equal pay for equal work.
Gee, I thought I'd get a rise out of that sooner or later. Delighted to have it.
Yes, okay, I just would like to know if you're insinuating or perhaps, point blankly saying that women and other minorities' skills are inferior to those of those now holding those jobs, and that they need to go through a period where their skills need to be improved and therefore deserve to be paid less?
No, I don't think desert has anything to do with it. I'm not, first of all, I think desert is an impossible thing to decide. Who deserves what? Nobody deserves anything. Thank God we don't get what we deserve. But I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying a very different thing. I'm saying that the actual effect of requiring equal pay for equal work will be to harm women. If women's skills are higher than men's in a particular job and are recognized to be higher, the law does no good, because then they will be able to compete away and can get the same income. If their skills are less for whatever reason, maybe it isn't because it's their sex, maybe it's because they were out of the labor force, maybe it's for other reasons. And you say the only way you are able to hire them is by paying the same wage, then you're denying them the only weapon they have to fight with. If the unwillingness of the men to hire them is because the men are sexist, are what's the phrase, racist, sexist pigs or whatever, if that's the only reason they want to hire them, nonetheless, you want to make it costly to them to exercise their prejudice. If you say to them, you have to pay the same wage no matter whether you hire women or men, and here's Mr. Sexist Pig, it doesn't cost him anything to hire men instead of women. However, if the women are free to compete and to say, well, now look, I'll offer my work for less, then he can only hire men if he bears a cost. If the women are really good as a man, as good as the men, then he's paying a price for discriminating. And what you are doing, not intentionally, but by misunderstanding, when you try to get equal pay for equal work laws, is what you are doing is reducing to zero the cost imposed on people who are discriminating for irrelevant reasons. And I would like to see a cost imposed on them. I'm on your side, but you're not.
I'm on your side, but you're not. Okay. So that's a little bit of a look at Milton Friedman. There's quite a bit more we could do on him, and of course on the other economists, but there's other things to look at. There's other things to move on to. So that's it for now. Until next time, see you then.